So over here in North America, we're working with Robert Irwin. The Irwin family have a huge legacy in Australia. Bindi has had quite a big profile in this market when she won Dancing with the Stars a few years ago.
Yep.
Robert's going to be on the next season of Dancing with the Stars. So we're really excited to roll the campaign out, and he'll be a great ambassador for us going forward.
Welcome to Luxury Travel Innovators. I'm your host, Adam Deflorian. On this episode, I'm joined by Chris Allison, Vice President of the Americas and New Zealand for Tourism Australia. Chris, thank you so much for joining me on Luxury Travel Innovators. I appreciate it.
Cool, it's good to see you. It's great to be here in Vegas this week.
Absolutely. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and what brought you to Tourism Australia?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the travel industry through all of my career. I actually, as people can probably tell from my accent, not originally from Australia, so I grew up in the UK. Worked when I graduated, worked for a little while for a tour operator called Thomas Cook. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth in the industry. And then actually joined Air New Zealand in the UK. So I was with them for 12 years in London, and then that's what brought me over to North America. So I was working in Canada for a while, and then eventually moved to LA with Air New Zealand. And then I left them in 2018. I was running our sales and marketing team in the US, and then I took a career break. So I went traveling for a while, which was awesome. Spent some good time in Australia and New Zealand as part of that, and then joined the Tourism Australia team about 6 years ago. So for the last 4 years of that, been heading up the team here at Tourism Australia North America. So so here we are. Yeah.
So you were so inspired by your time in Australia that you decided to go for Tourism Australia and work for them.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I was working at Air New Zealand, we used to do a lot of collaboration work with Tourism Australia. So that's how I got to know the team. And the great work that Tourism Australia were doing then, and we continue to do today. So it's a really exciting organization to work for.
Totally. Tell me more about it. What do you guys represent as a brand? What do you do to function?
I can explain it quite simply, but also quite complexly as well. So very simply, our role as a DMO is to raise the profile of Australia as a vacation destination, but also as an events destination as well. So we focus on both the leisure segment, but also the business events segment as well. So we're active in 15 markets globally where we do that. So our role is to make sure that Australia is on the consideration list when folks are considering their next travel destination. That's through all of the amazing brand work that we do, and then through all of our partnership and content initiatives. It's about taking that intent and really driving that urgency of that consideration to get people to start planning and booking and ultimately traveling to Australia.
Fantastic. What typically are you, or who typically are you competing against when it comes to Australia in regards to that consideration set?
Yeah, so it depends. We have a very varied competitor set. So if we look at the North American markets, one of our biggest competitors, no surprise, is New Zealand, given proximity in our part of the world. But some of the other major destinations that we know compete heavily for our target audience would be places like Japan, Italy and Europe, the UK, France, and South Africa as well to a lesser extent. So they're kind of the core set. We also, whilst it's a domestic destination, just given, I guess, the time for travel to get there, but also the product offering, we also actually look at Hawaii as one of our competitors as well too. So lots of varied competitors there, but lots of very compelling propositions in all those destinations as well.
That's great. I know you're VP of Americas in New Zealand. What does the distribution look like, or the percentage of global visitors into Australia look like in regards to outside of North America or including North America?
Yeah.
What percentage of visitation is that into Australia versus other key markets?
So if we look at the 15 markets that I mentioned, they make up roughly about 80% of our visitation into Australia. So if we break that down, for visitation, our number one market is New Zealand. No surprise, just given proximity. Our number two market is China. And then number three is the US. And when we combine North America, which would include Canada, we would sit at number two there. So this market is of significant importance to our tourism industry. But we also don't just look at visitation, we also look at value of visitor as well. So if we look at the value, and we measure that through spend, so how much people are spending on the ground, contributing to the economy. If we look at the US is actually number two in terms of value. So whilst we're number three for volume, we're number two for value.
What's the average length of stay look like for visitors coming from the US into Australia?
It's actually longer than you might think, and that's because we don't just measure the pure vacation traveler. We measure all visitor types. So the average length of stay in Australia is actually between 21 and 24 days. Wow. Which again, considering typical vacation time that are available to Americans, like that's actually quite long. It's very high. But it is one of the sort of middle of the road compared to some of our other markets. So one of our core priorities is to increase that length of stay for folks coming down. So there's a whole bunch of things we look at for that. So if we look at, particularly now since the pandemic, people have more flexible working arrangements. Yeah. So people are, there has been a growing segment of the population that do like to combine the flexibility to travel to a destination and work from that destination. Yeah. So that's a big opportunity we see as an example to kind of push up that average length of stay.
It's amazing. How's airlift into Australia from the US?
So we've got it's actually really exciting going forward. So I think to be transparent, one of the challenges we've had as a destination since our borders have reopened has been the pace that our aviation has not come back at. And there's been a whole bunch of reasons for that. But this year, we are seeing like a really significant increase in lift. So from across all airlines. So Qantas just this week, so they hold about 50% market share of the services to Australia. They've announced that they will be increasing their capacity by about 15% over the next 6 to 8 months. And within that's including big things like bringing the A380 aircraft back to Dallas for the first time since the pandemic. They are deploying Dreamliner aircraft on the LA-Brisbane service, which is helping increase the premium seat capacity on those routes. And then up in Vancouver, they're now operating year-round, which is great, but then also increasing their services between December and March up to daily operations. So that's great, but we also see all of the North American-based airlines really focusing on Australia and the South Pacific. So one of the most exciting things, I think, for our destination, for the North American traveller, is that for the first time from December this year, we will see non-stop service to Adelaide. So Adelaide has never had non-stop service to mainland US before. So United will be launching their flights between San Francisco and Adelaide in December this year. So that's a fourth international gateway into Australia for the first time. And then we also see Delta increasing their services as well. So they've been flying to Sydney for a number of years. They added Brisbane last year to much success. And then this year in December, they'll be adding Melbourne. So Delta will be servicing all of our 3 gateways from later this year too.
It's fantastic. Yeah. Of the US carriers, does United have the most seats into Australia?
It does, yeah. So of the 3, United is the biggest by a significant margin. Okay. And then it would be Delta and then American. American have their joint partnership with Qantas. So combined, they actually have the largest seat capacity of all the airlines.
With Qantas?
With Qantas, that's right. Yeah, it's part of their joint venture.
And that'll be the first A380 headed back to Australia with Qantas, or have they brought it back to other routes?
They've brought it back to Los Angeles, so it currently operates into LA and on some of their LA-Melbourne services, but it's the first time it's come back to Dallas since before the pandemic. So yeah.
My son wants to fly in an A380, so maybe we'll do that.
It is a great aircraft. Yeah, and if you live on the East Coast.
You're Colorado, in the middle, but
Denver.
Close enough, yeah.
So yeah, it's a quick hop over to Dallas to take that, or over to LA. So yeah, it's a beautiful plane. Yeah,
amazing. Talk to me more about the Come and Say G'day campaign. What inspired you to create it? What's around it?
So we've been on a 3-year journey now with Come and Say G'day as kind of our enduring proposition for Australia. I think when we relaxed our border restrictions about 4 years ago now, it was really a big opportunity for Australia to really assess how we wanted to back then re-announce the fact that Australia was open as a tourism destination to many markets, and really lean into what we felt was consumer sentiment at the time. We know that Australia was a little bit later to open than some other destinations. We also know that, particularly for North Americans, that they were continuing to travel to many destinations during the pandemic, but were not able to Australia. So we spent a lot of time looking at what we felt would really ignite our target consumers' passion for a destination like Australia. And then also looking at everything that we know is iconic about Australia, and really kind of is that ignition point for tuning into Australia and everything that we have to offer. So the Come and Say G'day proposition really was, in its simplest explanation, was about extending our arms and providing a warm welcome for everyone to come back to Australia again. And using kind of one of the unique elements of our tourism offering, which we believe is the people and our culture. And the best way that we express that is through the word G'day, and is something that is very unique to Australia and our community. So
Love it.
That was the basic insights around how we developed it. So we launched it 3 years ago, and we're just in the process of reinvigorating the campaign and kind of taking it into its next iteration. So the way we took the Come and Say G'day story is we created a animated ambassador, Ruby, Ruby our kangaroo. So the story of Come and Say G'day is Ruby's story of her journey across Australia, and showcasing Australia through her lens in terms of the depth and breadth of offering that we have, which has done super well for us. It's continued to outperform benchmarks. It's continued to outperform many of our major competitors, which is great. So for the next wave, we're calling it Chapter 2, which will be, we actually just announced it a couple of weeks ago, but we'll be rolling out in North America later next month. The next chapter is really about, so we've had the Australian story from Ruby's perspective, but the Australian story now is going to be through the lens of the traveller. So really, what we feel now it's important is to position Australia through the traveller's eyes and the traveller's voice. So our insight this time in terms of the campaign is really around the fact that we know now, and this is not unique to Australia, when people are traveling, they're not traveling for things, they're traveling for experiences. Yep. So what we want to bring forward is those experiences that you can only get in Australia, and that when you have those experiences, you bring them home with you, and that's like your souvenir of your trip, and that will stay with you for a lifetime. So the positioning is now is Come and Say G'day to the vacation that lasts a lifetime.
I love it.
Which we're really excited about. And you'll see shortly, if you haven't seen it already, we're working with some really excellent talent in all of our major markets in terms of our advertising. So for here in North America, we're working with Robert Irwin, which is great. So, the Irwin family have a huge legacy in Australia, and also a huge kind of global profile as well through Steve. Bindi has had quite a big profile in this market when she won Dancing with the Stars a few years ago. Yep. Robert's going to be on the next season of Dancing with the Stars starting in September. So if you haven't seen the assets yet, you can see them. So we're really excited to roll the campaign out, and he'll be a great ambassador for us going forward.
Fun. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Mm-hmm. What are some of the unique aspects of Australian culture that lead to an extraordinary tourist destination?
I think one of the things that we think is unique about Australia is the depth and breadth of that question. So we could probably spend half an hour answering that question. But I think some of the, I talked about Come and Say G'day, and really kind of the warm welcome and kind of the Australian way of life is one of the things that particularly North Americans really lean into. So that's really around kind of our modern day culture. One of the most significant things that I think sets Australia apart as a tourism destination is our indigenous culture. So we have in Australia the world's oldest continuous living culture in the world. Our indigenous communities have been around for 65,000 years, so older than any Asian cultures, any other Western cultures. So that's something that we take responsibility for at Tourism Australia in terms of the importance of that, not just for the traveller, but also just for our nation and the communities that we support. So we have a growing focus on providing that Indigenous voice, not just through the experiences that you get in Australia, but also through the advertising that we do in terms of how we market and promote the country as well. So we have a vast range of Indigenous-owned, led and guided experiences across Australia, and we always encourage, particularly when we're talking to advisor communities like we do here at Virtuoso Travel Week this week, that you should not be putting an itinerary together that does not include some element of Indigenous experience when you're in Australia, because it's so important to who we are as a country, both from past but also present and future as well. So we have that, and then beyond that, we just have such a, we're a big island nation, geographically as big as the US. Huge amounts of kind of coastal and aquatic opportunities. We have such unique wildlife in Australia. We have a really growing portfolio of kind of luxury accommodation and experiences across the country, rooted in our luxury lodges of Australia. So there's just so much, really, to be honest. But I think, as I kind of said earlier, we know that now that people, they're not purchasing things, they're purchasing experience. And I think it's really our people and our history and our culture that really sets the experience apart in Australia compared to other destinations.
And what are the key differences if somebody is planning a trip to Australia between each key market, right? Whether it be Sydney, Melbourne, etc. What are the sort of the key differences between them that somebody might want to consider if they're considering Australia?
Yeah. Great question. So I think, again, because of our geography, I think climate's an important consideration as folks are planning their trips across Australia. So, we have one of the tropics running right through the middle of the country, which means in the North American winter, like the northern part of the country, gets very hot and humid. The lower part of the country is a little bit more temperate, so much more similar to like a Southern California type of climate year round. But that also means that folks can plan their trip to Australia any time of the year, really. Our peak season is sort of November through February, which is the Australian summer. But we have such amazing experiences in the April to October period because of the weather. So the northern part of the country, for example, in those months is actually the best time to go because it's more temperate and more cooler up there. But you would still get a California type of climate that you would experience in the summer. So that's one thing to consider. I think also depending on, I guess, what type of experience you want as well. So if you're very heavy, for example, if you're if you're like a wine lover, then you're definitely going to be wanting to come down to like South Australia, the southern parts of Victoria for kind of all of our more known wine regions such as the Barossa Valley, the McLaren Vale, Mornington Peninsula, Yarra Valley. So they're all kind of in those areas. So if you're into that, that's where you want to go. If you want to go and experience things like the Great Barrier Reef, then you're going to be going kind of the northern part of Queensland. And if you want to be really immersing in our indigenous culture, then you probably want to be going to somewhere like the Northern Territory, and then into kind of the Red Centre where Uluru is. So I think it really just depends on kind of what folks' passion points are and what kind of areas they want to focus on as part of their itinerary and trip.
And I'm sure this is a difficult question, but what's your personal favorite?
I'm not allowed to have a personal favorite, necessarily, but we're very fortunate in our roles. We get to experience many of the amazing things that we have to offer in Australia, but I haven't seen everything. I probably never ever will in my lifetime. But I think some of the exciting up and coming parts of Australia for me personally, I think Tasmania is having a real spotlight on it at the moment. And I think the reason I like Tasmania is because you cannot find Tasmania anywhere else in Australia. So it's a very unique experience. It's for me personally, it reminds me a lot of Scotland, which is why I really like it. And again, some really interesting things there from the wildlife. Tasmania's got a really up and coming kind of distilling scene there as well. But also for folks that are a bit more adventurous, like in the north, you've got the Cradle Mountain National Park where you can go on these amazing, beautiful mountainous hikes as well. So I just love that aspect of Australia because you can't find it anywhere else in the country. I love our cities too. I think the vibrancy of our cities, the diversity of our cities as well. So if you think of all of our major capitals across each of the states, they all offer something very different and unique. So Sydney, of course, for the harbour, if you want to be on the water, you've got all those amazing iconic locations. But then Melbourne, for me, much more cosmopolitan, much more orientated around kind of the entertainment around the rivers. You've got the art scene there. You've kind of got all the laneways that you can go and explore. And then if you go like way out west to Perth, Perth for me is like a little slice of California. So very similar to San Diego for me in some ways. So you've kind of got, again, our cities offering very different, unique experiences as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And for surfers, where do they go? All over, but
surfers paradise for sure. So I was up in the Gold Coast last year, so definitely a surfer's mecca up there. But if you want somewhere a bit more hip or bohemian, then Byron Bay is really popular. So in the northern part of New South Wales, but also if you're going to be in Sydney, you can like surf right off Bondi Beach too, which is pretty cool and iconic. So yeah.
As far as the travel advisor community, such an important aspect, I'm sure, of Tourism Australia. What do you do for advisors that you think they really appreciate?
Yeah. Well, look, I think you're right. So again, first off, just to acknowledge, like the travel advisor community is so important to the success of a destination like Australia. For many folks, Australia is a bucket list destination. Yeah. For many folks, whilst we want them to come back more than once, their initial trip is probably more of a perception of a once in a lifetime trip. So, and we also know because of the size and scale, it's very complex to navigate Australia in terms of how you plan your itinerary. So we need the travel advisors' expertise to help their customers wayfind through what they want. So every question you ask me is probably a question that a travel advisor will get asked by someone traveling down there, and there's just so much to look at. So the way we try and harness the travel advisory community is probably around two aspects. So one around education, and then secondly around supporting that with immersion as well. So, education is really important because, again, for most travel advisors, they're probably not selling Australia, at most probably once or twice a year, unless you're extremely specialist for the destination. So we know it's important that we have to provide the right tools when they need them. So we invest heavily in our destination training program. So the Aussie Specialist program, we have about 4,500 qualified Australia sales specialists across North America. So we're a very engaged community. So we lean heavily into that. Through all the work that we do, we have a dedicated team that focus on that in terms of bringing people into that program, doing all the training and education through our webinars, in-person events. But the program is full of self-paced learning, and depending on what your specialism is, if it's for adventure, if it's for luxury, if it's for food and beverage, there's all these different pathways you can wayfind through the program. So there's that. But then also it's a big reason why we work with networks like Virtuoso, because we know the face-to-face connection is really important, and events like this are really important for us to sit in front of travel advisors, hear their challenges with selling Australia, hear what they need to get from us in terms of the education, make sure that we're connecting them with all of the network of preferred partners that Virtuoso and others have for Australia. So that's a big role that we do. So a lot in the education space. And then secondly, the immersion. At Australia, we know there's nothing, I think we used to say in some of our marketing years ago, Australia is not a place you see, it's a place you feel. And you can't feel it until you get there and experience for yourself. So we have a very robust program of immersion where we bring people into Australia. So whether that's through major platforms, so we have a major platform that we run every couple of years called Good Day Australia. So we bring about 200 travel advisors globally into Australia every year for a kind of a deep immersion into Australia. So there's like a 3-day workshop program, not dissimilar to what's happening downstairs at the minute in terms of getting in front of our operators and understanding the breadth and depth of the product. But then we also send everyone out on an immersive FMIL program for 5 days where they get to go off and experience different parts of the country. So that's probably kind of at the highest level. And then with each of our partners like Virtuoso, we continue to work on providing FMIL programs for them through the year as well. So really identifying the key sellers, the advisors who have big opportunity to sell Australia. And then the last couple of things I would mention is, which is very relevant to the Virtuoso audience, is our Australia Tourism Exchange. So that's an event that happens annually in Australia. It's our big international trade expo. So we have about 600 to 700 of our tourism providers in one place. We have about 600 to 700 bars of travel globally coming in. But as part of that, about 4 years ago, we added a Lux program to that. So we have about 100 highly vetted luxury travel advisors globally. We have about 20 that come down from the US. Wow. So again, like another elevation of getting those travel advisors in front of our luxury product in Australia for that one-to-one relationship building training. But then we also build like a very extensive kind of FMIL opportunity on the back of that as well. So
fantastic.
Lots, basically.
A lot.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In coming to Australia, would you say I'm sure there's advantages to each of these, right? But what would you say the advantages and or disadvantages are visiting by land versus by sea, cruise, etc. Like what would you say those, differences are in terms of if somebody's thinking about a trip?
Well, let me start with cruise because cruise is a huge segment of the industry for Australia, and North America in particular is like the largest portion of the cruising population in Australia. So I think it's about half of cruisers come from North America when they come down to Australia. So we know that's great because it gives folks the opportunity to more easily navigate probably multiple destinations, and we also know that allows travelers to combine other parts of the region with a trip to Australia as well through the cruise. So that's great. We love to see folks on cruise. The benefit of coming by land though really is about how much deeper you can get into the destination, how much more you can immerse into the destination, and also how much more you can customize your own trip on the destination as well. So look, cruising's great if you want to go to kind of specific locations and specific ports to kind of, tick the box, I guess.
Yeah.
But the best way to experience Australia is getting off a ship, customizing your itinerary, getting in front of our locals, and really immersing into the destination that way. So
love it.
We know people like to cruise, but we always encourage people to fly down there. Or if they are cruising, you're going that way, so extend, add onto your trip. And that's another thing that we focus on is how to, with the travel advisors, how to provide those compelling kind of pre and post itinerary options as well.
Chris, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'd love to finish with a few of our signature rapid fire questions. My favorite part of every interview.
Yeah, go.
What personal travel are you most excited about next?
I've actually got my sister and my nieces arriving on Thursday, so we're actually heading up to Mammoth for a few days next week. So that's on my most immediate horizon. So really excited to see them and take them up there for a few days. So,
sounds great. And this time of year is beautiful up there.
Oh, I can't
I'm sure
wait.
Weather's perfect.
I love it. Yeah.
Nice mountain experience. The show is all about innovation and moving forward.
Yeah.
But for a minute, I like to step back into the past. And the question is, what do you miss about the glamorous days of travel? And it doesn't have to be glamorous days of travel from 60 years ago. But what do you think it could be? Or it could be, what do you wish you had from the glamorous days of travel? Or it could be, what do you miss about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago in travel?
I miss no Wi-Fi on planes.
You're one of those.
Yes. I mean, I think I think it has tons of advantages, but it's not that long ago where we used to be able to get on a plane and just be like, no disruption for, especially flying all the way to Australia, no disruption for 12 or 13 hours. So I miss that.
Fair enough. Then innovation, moving forward, the whole point of what we do here. What innovation in travel doesn't exist today that you think is missing? And it doesn't have to be technology. It could be a function. It could be a thing. It could be a tool. Anything.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, I travel a lot, so I'm in airports a lot. So I think the thing for me that I think a great innovation, which I hope will come in the future, is contactless security. So, I think security is obviously paramount to our industry, but I would hope that our technology would advance in a way that we would be able to be scan through the airport without having to stop at a security line, without having to take our belts off, without having to take our laptops and shoes out. So I think that for me, I know it's a big pain point for a lot of travelers and one of those annoyances, particularly if you're in a rush. So I think that for me, that would be a massive save in the experience.
If you combine that with what one of my guests said earlier, which was figuring out how to get baggage there without having to schlep it yourself.
Oh, I know.
To bring the baggage and the bags in the way.
Yeah.
If you could have no security in the sense that you feel secure because it's critical, like you said, it's paramount to getting there safely, but using everything that we have from a technology perspective, AI tools, all sorts of sensors, cameras, etc., to be able to make it so you could just go right to your airplane, right? But we know we're safe, and at the same time, not having to bring the bags, the journey would be just as exciting as getting there in the destination.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Luxury Travel Innovators. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. See you next time.